Welcome, everyone. I'm Linda Baker, the Learning Director at the Center for Research and Education on Violence Against Women and Children. On behalf of the Learning Network and Knowledge Hub teams, welcome to today's webinar, Vicarious Trauma and Indigenous Perspective, Cultural Strengths as the Roots of Resilience for Healing Trauma and Building Worker Wellness. I'm located on the traditional lands of the Anishinaabe, the Haudenosaunee, the Lenape, and the Attawanderons peoples. These lands are connected with the London Township and Sombra treaties of 1796 and the Dish with One Spoon Covenant Wampum. We are honored that Elders Dan and Mary Lou Smoke are joining us to open our virtual gathering.
Miigwech, Linda. Where I come from, when we greet one another, we say Bonjour. So Bonjour.
Bonjour.
Asanyenas Kwe and Dejnakas Makwa Dodem, Batchwana Bay Dunjaba. My spirit name is Shooting Star Woman. I'm Bear Clan, and I originally come from Batchwana Bay, Ontario, which is on beautiful Lake Superior. And I'm very honored to be here to share some of the teachings that I've learned throughout my lifetime. And most of that time, I've been walking beside this guy here. We've been married 45 years this summer in August, and we lived together for 5 years before that because that's what the hippies did way back in the 70s. So Dan and I have been traveling together and going to ceremonies together and sitting side by side, and we even work together. And so everything that we're sharing with you are things that we learned from the elders, things that we learned from attending ceremony. We did not make it up or read about it in a book or see it in a movie. We went and seen the real thing, and that's what we're sharing. So Dan has lit up our smudge. And so smudge is a medicine that we use to help cleanse ourselves, and it purifies us. If you're having a bad day, light up a smudge, and this will help get rid of negativity. And one of the best ways I found to get rid of negativity, if smudging doesn't help, is to add in to sing a song. That always helps. Helps me anyway. And I know people love to sing. But I'm going to let Dan introduce himself.
Oh, yeah, Miigwech, Mary Lou.
Yeah.
Asanyenas and Dishnakas, Kildare, Dodom, Seneca Nation, Grand River, Dinjaba. My name is Dan Smoke. My Seneca name is Asanyenas. Was given to me in the Onondaga Longhouse, probably about 1973, 72, just after we met. And that's that Longhouse is our way of life at Six Nations, Grand River Territory, where I come from, near Brantford. And now we're living in Deshkan-Zibe. We're living right here in London, Ontario. And we've been here for the whole duration of our marriage.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, since 77, about that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so 44 years. Anyways, I'm very honored too to be in the presence of the Center for Violence and Research and Education against Violence Against Women and Children. I believe that work that they do is invaluable, and I'm always glad to participate. I'm always happy to. I mean, I was telling Linda earlier that I feel so safe, whenever we do things with them.
We all need to feel safe.
Yes.
Yeah, that's so important.
Yeah, because I remember times when we never had that. We were never, that wasn't provided to us, and we were like accosted with critique and etc. Just because we did radio, just because we spoke out and expressed our opinion. Anyways, I'm just happy, so happy to be here, but I think I'm going to join in with this song.
Okay, all right.
I love to sing
All
too.
right. A lot of people don't realize that Dan and I have a mixed marriage. He's from the Iroquois Confederacy, and I'm mostly Ojibwe. I discovered throughout my lifetime that I'm part Mi'kmaq, part French, 5 parts Ojibwe, 1 part Lakota. My father, his people came from up in Batchwana Bay area, but they originally come from the Lakotas. They were the ones who had the Lakota blood. And at the turn of the century, they were known as the half-breeds because they were half Lakota and half Ojibwe, half Anishinaabe. So when we were dating in Toronto, we went to anything that was Indigenous. When they had elders come in, we were there. And, you know, when they had socials, Iroquois socials, we were there and we danced to them all the time. So this song we're going to share with you is kind of like our courting song, but it's a traditional Iroquois song that's at least 2,000 years old, if not older. I just said Matakiwasan, and that means all my relations in the Lakota language. In the Anishinaabe language, we say Ganigana. So Dan's going to say a short and condensed version of the Thanksgiving address.
Oh, Ganigana, Marilu. Chimigwetch. Asan Enes Indishnikas. Senio es Guatahas, Kitkodanwa, Wahase, Jawise Dodakwa, Oskada Nagohas, Oida Hanahas. Grandfather, grandmother, here are sacred thoughts, here are sacred prayers as we bring our good minds and our good intentions into the circle today for this webinar that is going to be very, very exciting. And I just want to say it'll be good medicine for all of us. So in acknowledging this, we just want to wish you all a really beautiful Wani Sleo, a beautiful day today. Hope you're already enjoying it. And we just want you to know that we're glad that you're in our company right now, because we'll take care of you. And that's something that we can always assure you that you're in a safe place. But also I want to acknowledge the water, which is that feminine sacred element of life that all creation needs in order to survive. And the water, all the life that lives in her, all the life that lives on her, is still following her sacred instruction, and she still looks after all life. Nothing would survive. So we just want to give greetings, give thanks to the water, the lifeblood of our mother, the earth. Also want to acknowledge our Mother Earth. Our Mother Earth is that other feminine sacred element of life that all creation needs in order to survive. And our Mother Earth, all the life that lives in her, all the life that lives on her, from the crawlers to the two-leggeds, to the four-leggeds, to us human beings, to the medicine plants, the regular plants, the trees, all the life that lives in the trees, all the life that lives on the trees, the flyers, for they are all part of an interdependent, interconnected, interrelated life support system. We just want to acknowledge, grandfather, grandmother, all this creation still looking after our mother, the earth, and she's taking care of all of this creation, taking care of all of us. Nothing would survive without her. Also want to acknowledge our Father Sky, who represents the air. Our Father Sky continues to breathe that life into all creation. He follows his sacred instructions, for nothing would survive without our Father Sky, grandfather, grandmother. So be it in our minds. We also want to acknowledge our eldest brother, the sun. Our eldest brother, the sun, travels from the eastern door across to the western door every single day. And so now he's going to be with us a little bit longer. The days are going to be longer since we passed the middle of the winter solstice. So we just want to acknowledge grandfather, grandmother, that our eldest brother represents fire. And when he shows his face as he travels across the sky, he provides us with heat and he provides us with light, which we need in order to survive. So we want to give greetings, give thanks that our eldest brother, the sun, is still following his sacred instructions, grandfather, grandmother. So be it in our minds. We also want to acknowledge our grandmother moon, whom you did, Mary Lou, a full moon ceremony a couple of weeks ago. And we just want to acknowledge that we are now in the time of the spirit moon. And the spirit moon is to let us know that we have passed the middle of the winter solstice. And so now Mother Earth, who is sleeping right now because she worked so hard for us in the last cycle of creation, providing us with a good hunt, providing us with a good harvest, she needs her rest. She needs that balance. So now she is going to be waking up probably around the February, March thunder moon time. And when she does wake up, the whole cycle of creation will begin again, and the thunderers will come back, and the thunderers will come and they will wake everything up. They will shake everything up and let us know that the cycle, this next cycle, has begun. So, and that's always in an accompaniment with the maple sap, which we like participating in because it's a sweet water ceremony, wata and not take. This is the name we call the sweet water, the maple sap, because it's medicine. We're supposed to drink a glass of it a day for 1 month time, 28 days. And if we do, then our blood becomes fortified with all those good organic elements of life that comes from Mother Earth. So I just want to say, grandfather, grandmother, that our grandmother moon is still following her sacred instructions. Also want to acknowledge the stars. They remind us when it's time for us to conduct our ceremonies. And they like, just like they reminded us when it was time to do the midwinter a couple of weeks ago on Friday, I think it was January the 7th. So just wanted to acknowledge grandfather, grandmother, that our star relatives are still following their sacred instructions. They look after all creation. Nothing would survive without the stars. Want to acknowledge the thunder beings. I spoke a little bit about the thunderers. Their job is to wake up, shake up creation around the time of the thunder moon when the cycle of creation is about to begin. And also they bring during the year, during the summer and the fall, they bring the purifying rains that cleanse Mother Earth and gives her a drink. So again, nothing would survive without that. And we always have to acknowledge grandfather, grandmother, that the thunderers are very important, but right now they're letting Mother Earth sleep. They're letting her rest, so they're not bothering her by coming around and thundering. So they're still at home in the eastern door, but they will come back when the next cycle of creation is about to begin, because they know when that happens. So just want to acknowledge grandfather, grandmother, the four protectors. They are those celestial beings who look after all spiritual matters. We all have spirit helpers. We all have angels that help guide us, help us with our faith, help us with our belief system. And these spirit helpers are our spiritual guidance system, because we listen through our intuitive side. We listen to what they say and they guide us to the answers that we need to make us better human beings. So it's good that we have that. And if we don't know about that, then we should be taught that. And it's very easy to learn, and it's just drill and practice. Hey, Mary Lou? Mm-hmm. We just drill and practice, and we just keep listening, just keep guided by those that intuitive side, that intuition as it's called. So I just want to acknowledge grandfather, grandmother. The protectors are still following their sacred instructions. And they work for Sagwan Dijon, Dijamanado, the creator, Wankantanka, Glooskap, the maker of our bodies. And right now, the creator has put us all in these places where we have everything we need. Like Linda talked about this area that we're in right now, the Adawandran, the Anishinaabe, the Lenni Lenape, the Haudenosaunee. This is where the Great Lakes watershed, everything is here that we need in order to survive. We don't have to go anywhere else because it's all right here. It's like our pharmacy. It's like our supermarket. It's like everything we need is right here. Our library, right here. So that's why we are very fortunate to be able to live in this very sacred place. So I just want to say, in the spirit of our ancestors, all my relations, Daneto, hi. I hope there it is.
Well, we go to Dan, and now we'll turn it right back over to Linda.
Mary Lou and Dan, I just want to thank you so much for the beautiful song and the heartfelt Thanksgiving address. It means so much to all of us. We had just under 5,000 people register for today's webinar. And I'm noticing as people sign on that we're close to 3,000 now who are able to actually be here and participate in the webinar. And I'm so pleased to be able to introduce today's speaker, Deanna Jones-Keeshig. Deanna is a trainer at the Thunderbird Partnership Foundation. She has dedicated herself to this pursuit of Indigenous knowledge and practice grounded in the way of the heart teaching and life ways. She has more than 25 years of practice in working with First Nations to support holistic, culturally relevant, community-specific, strength-based approaches towards health, healing, and wellness. Deanna is a devoted mother and grandmother who supports her family's well-being through song connections, strong connections, I'm sure, involving song, and relations in family, community, and cultural practices. Deanna, we'd ask you to share your screen now, and we're going to turn the presentation over to you. Welcome.
Miigwech. Okay, let me get situated with this technology. And I just want to confirm, can people see my shared screen?
Yes, it looks
Great.
beautiful.
And I have one more thing I have to do. Okay. Oh, I'm looking for one more thing. Let's hope I can find it. There we go. Going to move some things around on the screen with all of the technology. And two screens. We have a lot of things happening on the screens. So I'm just going to move people's faces a little bit. Well, I shouldn't put it on there. I'll put it over here. Okay. So Bojo, Jonya Benesikwe, Indigenous Wabasheshi and Dodem. Shawanaga, Ingayania, Shingnaming, and Donjaba, Ojibwe, Bodawadabi, and Anishinaabe in Dao. I am Deanna Jones-Keeshig, and I am a trainer. On behalf of the Thunderbird Partnership Foundation, we are honored to present Vicarious Trauma and Indigenous Perspective, Cultural Strengths, Roots of Resilience for Healing Trauma and Building Worker Wellness. Miigwech to the Learning Network and Knowledge Hub, Center for Research and Education on Violence Against Women and Children at Western University for this invitation. I also want to acknowledge and say miigwech to our elders for that beautiful opening song, words, prayer. It is such a great and beautiful grounding for a beautiful winter day with lots of snow and sunshine. And so I know that today is going to be a good day, and I look forward to spending some time with you. As indicated, you can utilize the Q&A function as well as the chat. Please feel free to introduce yourself if you haven't already, where you're from and the role that you fulfill in your everyday work or home and family. And I have had many opportunities in many capacities to work with our people all over this land. And I have been able to establish relations and connections with people. And I know that in the Zoom format, I know that you can see me, you can hear me, but I just want you to know that I'm not ignoring you. I cannot see you or hear you, but I can see the chat. So that will be my way of being able to facilitate that connection with you. And I know I probably have some cousins on here since we have such a big family. So I'm going to just move along here. Hopefully we will get to have some opportunity, and there will be some flexibility at the end for questions and answers. All right, so this webinar presentation will provide an Indigenous perspective. It'll identify strengths, the roots of resilience for healing trauma and building worker wellness. I will begin with an introduction to Thunderbird Partnership Foundation and then present culture as foundation. This will support an Indigenous perspective that is holistic and strength-based in approach, and support looking at trauma and vicarious trauma information from an Indigenous context to support the development of culturally trauma-informed care and build resilience to support healing and wellness of trauma. We always begin in a place of strength and grounding of who we are and where we are with one another. I almost said next slide. Okay, so who is Thunderbird? The Thunderbird Partnership Foundation is a leading culturally centered voice on First Nations mental wellness, substance use, and addictions in Canada. The organization supports an integrated and holistic approach to healing and wellness, serving First Nations through various levels of government, through research, training, and education, policy, and partnership, and communication. Thunderbird strives to support culture-based outcomes of hope, belonging, meaning, and purpose for First Nations individuals, families, communities. Thunderbird's mandate is to implement the Honoring Our Strengths, a renewed framework to address substance use issues among First Nations in Canada, and the First Nations Mental Wellness Continuum Framework. We are a division of the National Native Addictions Partnership Foundation, Incorporated. So that's, in a statement, who we are. And these are our frameworks. They are our mandate. They represent the collective voice of First Nations across Canada. And so I want to speak a little bit about these frameworks. And all of the work that we do at Thunderbird is guided by these frameworks. The Honoring Our Strengths, a renewed framework for addressing substance use issues among First Nations in Canada, promotes a continuum of care with essential supporting elements, including community development, prevention, promotion, secondary risk reduction, early intervention, treatment, and specialized treatment, and promotes culture-based defined principles within Indigenous culture as central to all aspects of care in addressing substance use and mental health. The Indigenous Wellness Framework was also developed simultaneously with the First Nations Mental Wellness Continuum. And this was a process of several years in conversations with First Nations across this country. They talked about wellness. They talked about healing. They talked about Indigenous knowledges and cultural practices that can support healing and wellness. And in their conversation, this then help facilitate the development of these guiding frameworks to help First Nations communities to be able to determine a way forward that is about restoring balance, about restoring wholeness. Our circles are outside the box. They are restoring our circle systems. This is the way that we operated in the beginning and that we are working towards to facilitate wellness. It also speaks about hope, belonging, meaning, and purpose. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about that in the next slide. The First Nations Wellness Continuum Framework, which is rooted in Indigenous knowledge and cultural practice, builds on the Honoring Our Strengths framework. The key themes of this particular framework that was developed talks about population health, holistic ways to address key needs across the lifespan with essential services. And in there, you will see all of the different roles and responsibilities that we all have to creating this wholeness and this wellness collectively. The Honoring Our Strengths was finalized in 2012, and the IWF and the First Nations Mental Wellness Continuum were finalized in 2015. This supports our paradigm shift and helps us to support the strengths of First Nations community to vision and determine their building the wellness of their individuals, their families, their communities, and nations through a process that will help support change for our peoples. So the Indigenous Wellness Framework was developed through research with First Nations, as I had indicated with the conversation. And so it's representative of the collective voice of our people, the knowledge and practice of Indigenous people in Canada. And the key elements are hope, belonging, meaning, and purpose. These measures can support wellness. It can be measured through the Native Wellness Assessment to support those outcomes where we will have spiritual, emotional, mental, and physical wellness. It's holistic, strength-based, culturally grounded, a tool to support wellness outcome through Indigenous knowledge and cultural practices. So we begin with talking about this particular framework in the East, where hope and spirit wellness sit. This is the aspect of the whole and healthy person. It's expressed through belief, values, and identity. And that's what supports hope. In the South is where belonging and emotional wellness sit. This is the heart level of a whole and healthy person. And it is expressed through our attitude, in our desire to relate and connect, our relationship to creation and creator, our clan, our family, our community, our nation of people. And that is what supports belonging. And those are the indicators that help us to achieve that. When we look at the West, where meaning and mental wellness sit, This is expressed through intuition, which is a heart knowing, and also our rational thinking knowledge. Part of our heart knowing includes blood memory because it comes from the spirit. Our rational cognitive knowledge, understanding, integration, balance of emotion, and in cognitive knowledge is what helps support meaning. And so we want to ensure that through knowledge development, through our inheritance of ancestral wisdom, through our family lines, our nation lines, our clan lines, connection to creation, that we will have that sense of meaning in our life. When we look to the north, we are talking about purpose and physical wellness. This is expressed through wholeness. Our bodies enable us to move through life. And there are many aspects of ourself, and all aspects are integrated and connected into that whole. And so we have a way of being and a way of doing that supports living life purposefully. So the Native Wellness Assessment, just to note, is available to Indigenous communities and organizations. If you wish to have more information, please contact research@thunderbirdpf.org. And if there happens to be any of my colleagues on the webinar today, if you could put that information in the chat for people, should they wish to connect with you, that would be most appreciated. They will connect with you and share further information if you're interested in implementing this in your community programs and or organizations as you work with people and move them towards healing and wellness. Just give me a moment here. I need to just take a sip. So to build upon the understanding of wellness through the knowledge of Indigenous creation stories, Elder Jim Dumont in 2015 shared further about connection, relation, and caring. Indigenous origin stories provide knowledge and understanding about life. And so it's really important as Indigenous people to know our story. And another elder that we cherished, Eddie Benton Beneva, would always begin his sharing with all creation stories are true. Indigenous peoples are unique, distinct, and beautiful in the many lands upon which they live in the world. And the Anishinaabe elder, Jim Dumont, shared the following understanding. The Creator cares. The Creator cares for all of creation. The universe cares. The earth cares. And all beings of creation care. All of life acts in a caring way towards one another and has a caring attitude towards one another. The beings within creation care about each other and about how they relate to one another within this interconnected interdependence of the web of life. And so when we consider all of that knowledge, then we consider how we are originally made from a very kind and caring creator, and that all of life can support our life as human beings living upon the earth. Cultural continuity across time and generations has been the source of First Nations strength and resiliency. Holistic, strength-based, culturally relevant, community-specific approaches are grounded in culture as the foundation to support healing and wellness. Knowledge given by the spirit or creator is held in sacred societies and other sacred items. It is accepted as truth by Indigenous peoples. It is the expression of this truth in the physical world through our cultural practices, our ceremonial practices that we have done every day across generations is what is accepted as our evident truth about life and knowing and living life. Indigenous knowledge is fluid. In the creator's law or natural law continuously flows from one generation to the next. And that we have a knowing that the create spirit placed everything within creation that humankind would ever need to live life. Consider the knowledge and practices you hold, your family holds, your community and people hold, and how this supports life and wellness. And consider ways in which knowledge and practices emerged at different times through generations in order to help the people to live life as they needed. So all of the seeds of life were at the beginning and they continue to be held and will emerge and life as life unfolds and as the people need and as the people access to support living life into the future. Indigenous worldview is about how the world is perceived by Indigenous people. Indigenous worldview can be understood through the Indigenous knowledge that is held within sacred teachings of origin, spirit connection, earth creation, relationship, and life ways. It provides the cultural knowledge about the values about how to live a good life and how to live every day in this world. Culture is the expression of those life ways, and the spiritual, psychological, mental, emotional, social, physical, material practice of Indigenous worldview and knowledge. So this particular session, I'm going to be identifying certain principles that are a part of worldview, that are the foundation of culture, that is the collective voice of First Nations across Canada. And all of this information that I am sharing comes from the Indigenous Wellness Framework Reference Guide. We have numerous resources on our website, and I will share the address of the website near the end of the presentation. And we have a library in which you can download resources for free. So and that can be helpful for people if you're wanting to have some more resources and information about this. So creation stories are the evidence base for all that exists within creation and the relationship between all elements of creation. Spirit is best understood through creation stories, the foundation of all Indigenous knowledge. The spirit is an inclusive concept of body, mind, heart, spirit. They work together. They're an integrated whole. The spirit is in all things and throughout all things. We live in a spiritual universe within a spiritual relationship. The Indigenous way of life is directed by spirit. It is spirit driven, spirit defined, spirit motivated, and spirit centered. The circle is the most expressive of the Indigenous view of the world. As a primary pattern within creation, this concept influences how we see and perceive the world and life. It symbolizes wholeness. Within this concept, life is perceived to be all-encompassing, interconnected, interrelated, interdependent, and continuous. The wholeness of life is the circle of life. When we move out equally in the four directions, it forms a perfect circle. The energy of the four directions, that life force, hold all of life together, and that great circle of life's unfolding. The world is constantly changing. And that's besides the continuity of life, there is a constant in change as our experience as human beings. So creation is always moving towards harmony and balance. Harmony is a central value of Indigenous worldview in which all of life cares for one another while respecting autonomy, free will, and strives to achieve and maintain an interconnected relationship that assures quality of life for the collective whole. We are all part of the circle. We are all related and connected through the circle. Balance is a fundamental principle within the way that harmony in interrelationship work. We live in harmony and balance with our family and creation when we respect our differences, care for each other, and recognize that we are all a part of this whole. All of creation is interconnected, interdependent, and interrelated. All of creation consciously cares about the harmony and well-being of life. All of creation is regarded as relatives: the plants, the trees, the animals, the fish, the rocks, and visible and unseen forces of nature are all considered relations. This is evidenced in the way Indigenous people recognize their relational connection to creation in the land and the territories they come from, and their relationship to creation, family. Within our original language, we identify our relational connection to creation. In the Anishinaabe language, one of the ways the moon is identified is as Nokmis, my grandmother. Our relational connection extends further, the identification of clan, family, place. In the introduction, I introduced where I come from, my clan family that I'm a part of, my community, the people I come from. All of that connection is recognized because they are a part of who I am as a person. And it helps people to see how we are related and connected. Another key understanding of Indigenous worldview is based on the premise that the universe cares. The Creator cares for creation. The earth, our mother, cares for all of her children, both human and earth life. As beings of creation, we care for each other because we are interrelated, interdependent, and interconnected. We are born with kindness and caring as gifts from the Creator. Nurturing this gift in our relationship teaches us about respect. Respect is honoring our interconnection with all of life that is reciprocal and interpersonal. It is important that we understand that caring, that harmony and balance, connection and relationship are important for our wellness as individuals, as families, as communities, and as peoples of the earth. We are all relatives because we have the same mother. The earth is a living, breathing, conscious being, complete with heart, feeling, soul, spirit, and physical organic life as it is with all relatives. Our identity and relationship is defined by the land and the connection to the natural world. In our mind, people are of the earth and from the earth. We have a very strong connection with who we are and where we come from. And we know our relation and connection from where we come from. And we will take care of that because the land takes care of our life. The experience of living in this world is understood as a journey of the spirit moving through changes in life progressively in stages that are interconnected and continuous. In the same way, lives are connected intergenerationally as strings of life, connecting us to our ancestors and to those yet unborn. We are spirits who experience human life. We have shared lives from past, present, to future. This is the relational connection of life. The original language that we were gifted with is the most expressive communication of the spirit, emotions, thinking, behavior, and actions of the people. The language translating Indigenous knowledge is the breath and voice of culture. The language is the truest and most expressive transmission of the original way of life and way of being in the world. Okay, so origin stories of creation among Indigenous people reflect worldview, history, culture, ways of being, and living in the world. These are the stories of who we truly are as Indigenous people. The Indigenous perspective of life is holistic and provides a foundation of strength through the continuity of culture. Understanding the experience of collective trauma, historical, intergenerational, and vicarious trauma, and responding to the specific context of Indigenous people's lived and living experience of trauma is a story about what happened. It is not who we are. Utilizing a holistic wellness, strength-based, trauma-informed care approach supports healing and wellness and grounds Indigenous people in a place of strength with culture as foundation. Indigenous knowledge from the beginning of creation provides an understanding of the inherent gifts of Indigenous people and grounds Indigenous people in strength and resilience towards living life through culture as foundation. It also informs how lives are connected intergenerationally as strings of life, connecting us to our ancestors and to those yet unborn. Blood memory shapes our being through the physical and spiritual connection and inheritance through creation, through ancestral relations across generations. Indigenous peoples carry the seeds of inherent Indigenous ancestral wisdom, strength, and resilience, as well as blood memory of the shared collective lived experience of historical intergenerational trauma. That is in blood memory. So epigenetics is an interesting knowledge that has been developed in science. It is important to note that it is shaped by environment. Many people nurture the seeds of their life, are strengthening the strings of their lives and weaving beautiful braids. And that's really important to know. The first human being was created in the same pattern of creation. Thought, heartbeat, movement, seeds, DNA. Within DNA was placed the gifts carried by Anishinaabe, The gifts carried by Anishinaabe include kindness, caring, honesty, and strength. And this was shared from Elder Jim Dumont. So if you are Indigenous and you know your origin and creation story, what are those gifts that are a part of you to help you live life? The elasticity in Indigenous people's resilience comes from one's spiritually or spirit, and it's endowed through identity and values. The collective holistic resiliency of our people is seen in the existence of a core constellation of values found to be sufficiently resistant to acculturation as to persist over time through various assimilative forces. This is the roots of our resilience and the strength of our resistance. If we consider Indigenous people's teaching about the spirit journey through life as human, and the spirit shadow being reflection of the spirit and the experience of living life as a human being, the shadow can be perceived as the soul. Trauma is an ancient Greek word, and it means wound. Eldaro Duran, an Indigenous clinical psychologist who worked with Indigenous people in the United States for many years, describes the original people's experience of trauma as soul wound. Within this understanding, it means as human beings, we can experience trauma in life as a soul wound. However, the spirit, our spirit, the essence of who we are, retains its original quality and way of being. This is also very significant and important to know and to remember. Many Indigenous helpers are considered to be soul healers. Thus, building upon the knowledge, Indigenous knowledge as a spirit living a human experience, we have spiritual, emotional, mental, and physical aspects of ourselves, which allow us to experience life in a whole and complete way. The shadow is a reflection of the spirit and can be perceived as a human soul. The soul's experience is inclusive of interrelated, interconnected, shared life within family, community, people, and world that extends beyond our lifetime to across generations. This is known as blood memory. The wounding of the soul or soul wound individually and across generations is perceived as intergenerational trauma as a result of historical trauma collectively experienced by Indigenous peoples. Braveheart defines historical trauma as the cumulative emotional and psychological wounding over the lifespan and across generations emanating from mass group trauma experience. Thus, Indigenous people have collectively experienced historical trauma through colonization. The impacts of historical trauma have led to collective experience of intergenerational trauma. And intergenerational trauma is the stressful, traumatic experiences from colonization that have been carried over from one generation to the next. So in this slide, we're going to talk a little bit about what happened. We began this presentation today with our original story, a story about who we truly are. And this is a reflection of our collective story about what happened. in a period of time in our history about our lived experience and continues today in our living experience as Indigenous people. A part of the culturally trauma-informed approaches is awareness, to see the place of strength, to inform connection, understanding, and movement forward. And so we see first contact, we see forced relocation and termination, economic resources, treaty, invasion, war, disease period. We see colonial laws, policies, subjugation, and reservation period, residential school period. I need to move people's pictures. And we see the results of that loss of land, the loss of culture, the loss of language, the loss of the way we lived life and took care of our lives, leading to sometimes loss of hope, the experience of addiction, suicide, violence, oppression, systemic racism, challenging our social determinants and health outcomes as a people. And so while there is changes and changes occurring, there is still much work to be done. But we are moving forward and we are doing the work. And it will take all of us to be able to do this. Okay. Trauma can affect every aspect of ourself, including spiritual, emotional, mental, and physical well-being, and can affect all aspects of our lives as individuals, families, communities, and society. Traumatic events happen to everyone. It is part of the human experience and societal conditions and events. It could include individual losses, changes, experiences, family conflicts and changes, crashes, natural disasters, wars, pandemics, violence, sexual exploitation, child abuse and neglect, and harmful social conditions that are inescapable. It can have a profound impact on the individual's identity and relational context of heart, mind, body, and spirit. However, how a person responds to these circumstances is unique to that individual's social history, genetic inheritance, protective factors that may be in the person's life at the time. This chart talks about the neurobiology of trauma, and it has been adapted from the chart that was developed by Clinic in Manitoba in 2013, contained within the trauma toolkit they developed. We wanted to adapt so that we can include our knowledge and experience. And so it includes the Indigenous Wellness framework and concepts of Indigenous knowledge from the Thunderbird Partnership Foundation. And so we want to talk a little bit about what happens. So trauma begins with an event, something that happens that triggers a traumatic response. And so that's box one. And I don't know, can you see my mouse over there? Can you? All right. So this one right here. And it depends on a number of factors, as indicated before, our social history, genetic inheritance, and protective factors, as identified previously. It is important to note that the event was beyond the control of the individual, family, community, or people. As human beings, we are wired to survive, and our brain and body's instinct will activate the flight, fight, or freeze response to ensure that we will survive. This is a normal response to an abnormal event that we may or may not experience as traumatic. It's also important to note that this survival response can be triggered within a situational context in our environment if it mimics the original's traumatic experience that we may have in our lived experience. It can also contribute to additional layers of traumatic experience for unresolved trauma and grief when we experience new incidents of trauma. So there are essentially two pathways in our response to experience trauma. It is important for us to note that there is a fluidity of the relational connection of trauma where the source of trauma emerges and be the source of strength, healing, and resilience to support spiritual, emotional, mental, and physical wellness towards hope, belonging, meaning, and purpose. And I'm going to see if I can make my a little bit bigger. Okay, I'm not. So I'm going to be looking a little bit to the side. So on the left-hand side, you will see the inability to stabilize, self-regulate, or co-regulate with someone of significance to support our response to the trauma. And we can develop a distorted meaning of the event. If this is significant and continued, we will be challenged physical, mental, emotional, and spiritually in our health. It'll affect our behavior, our relationships, and can potentially our relations with family and community. And on the other side, on the right side, you see the ability to stabilize, to self-regulate and or co-regulate the traumatic experience in our response, and it can support growth and development of positive meaning in our experience of the event. We have recovery of our physical, mental, emotional, spiritual wellness, a stabilization of our behavior, resilience in our person, relationship, community, and family well-being. So the relationality of trauma, healing, and resiliency are all of those lower boxes. So it can be a source of strength and wellness or the source of trauma. Sometimes I speak about this as two sides of a feather. And so we have community and society. We know that we can have cultural connection, hope, belonging, meaning, and purpose, but we can also experience traumatic events in our experience of living life. On the other side, we have family who also support cultural connection, hope, belonging, meaning, and purpose in our lives and relation with our who we are within that context. These are the lower boxes are our aspects of ourself: spirituality, emotional health, mental health, and physical health. When we have wellness, we have hope. When we are struggling, we can become hopeless. We could experience hopelessness. In our emotional health, when we are well, we have that sense of belonging. And if we become disconnected in our relations, in who we are, in our family, and in life, we can have that absence and desire to connect and soothe, and which can lead to substance use and misuse behaviors as a way of adapting to be able to cope and live. Mental health is about wellness in having meaning in life and that our life is meaningful. And if we do not find meaning in life, then the risk of harm exists for us. Physical health is about our behavior and about living well. And that, with all of the other aspects of ourselves, helps support purpose. And we know who we are, we know where we belong, we have meaning. And so we live purposefully with the gifts given to us in order to be a part of that living whole. We can also, if we are still struggling with that, struggle with illness and other behaviors that make it difficult for us to live our lives. And so that's the overall chart and the adaptations that we have incorporated to understand the experience of trauma. So vicarious traumatization is the cumulative transformative effect on the helper working with the survivors of traumatic life events. And that came out in 1995 by Perlman and Sakitin. We can experience vicarious trauma as helpers and secondary collective trauma through our relation and connection to family, community, and the event itself. And so you see how that drop and the rippling effect touches us in our connection and relation. Vicarious trauma and the trauma exposure response. Trauma exposure response affects people spiritually, emotionally, mentally, physically, behaviorally, interpersonally, as well as professionally. Everyone's experience is unique. It's distinct, it's influenced by numerous factors. The experience can significantly, though, change people's wellness. And as an example of these responses, there are some listed in these charts that you see on the slide. This is not exhaustive. There are many symptoms, and it helps you in your awareness to be trauma informed about what are some of those effects, potentially where I may be experiencing some of those effects and what I may need to do to take care of my wellness. So in spiritual, there's hopelessness, questioning our beliefs, values, and identity as a result of our experience in a traumatic event that we may see in our lives. Emotional, our interpersonal relationships can be changed as a result of that. We may be withdrawn, we may be conflictive, and we may be numbed out. So there are many ways in which we can respond. And then fear, all the way to anxiety, sadness, all the way to depression. In mental, we have a loss of meaning, a lack of concentration, or the ability to maintain focus, and confusion, preoccupation with the traumatic event that occurred. So we see a script where we're constantly reviewing the event and what has happened and how we're feeling. It's actually our way of trying to process what has happened to make meaning. And sometimes we need help in order to be able to do that. And sometimes we need to be able to tell our brains that we are safe now, that we are okay. And it is possible with various techniques in wellness to be able to support our overall healing and wellness. Physically, we may experience sleep disturbances, appetite changes, and physical health changes. The amount of stress that we may experience through a traumatic event changes our balance within our bodies and can lead to illness. So we need to be aware of how these can affect us. So vicarious trauma, the impact of vicarious trauma occurs on a continuum. It is influenced by a number of factors. And here on this slide, you see a number of different listed items. It's about the role and how much traumatic information a practitioner is exposed to, the degree of support in a workplace, personal life support, and personal experiences with trauma. The influence of traumatic vicarious trauma can be seen and felt on both personal and professional levels, and in some instances at the community level. Some of the risk factors for us to consider are having a past history of trauma, overwork, ignoring healthy boundaries, taking on too much, lack of experience, too much experience, working with large numbers of traumatized children and people, working with large numbers of people who have suffered with dissociative disorders, having too many negative clinical outcomes in our work to help others. And so you see those three circles and how this can be connected. Worker experience, working with traumatized people, and organizational environment. So identifying some of the risks helps lead us towards what can we do to mitigate those risks, and how can we build resilience and strength in order to support wellness. One more trauma I would like to talk about that we are all very familiar with in our experience is, while there often is a discussion about trauma typically referring to the impact that is related at an individual level, or a few people, collective trauma refers to the impact of a traumatic experience that affects and involves entire groups of people, communities, or societies. Collective trauma is extraordinary in that it not only brings distress and negative outcomes and consequences to individuals, but it can also change the entire fabric of our community. COVID-19 is a global pandemic. It is a collective traumatic experience for everyone. It is affecting everything, everywhere. We have all experienced the distress and uncertainty of change in our lives and have adapted our lives in response to public health. Indigenous people have demonstrated incredible resiliency and strength in the face of great challenge to support healing and wellness through layers of traumatic experience, adapting, sharing strength and caring, building connections to support one another. And all of this, and one of the nice things about technology is the ability to virtually connect. And here I am connecting to all kinds of people, although I don't think I would have been connecting to all these people face to face anyways. But there's opportunity for us to maintain connection. We have become innovative, creative, drawing on best and wise practices in order to continue to be able to share strength and caring to support wellness of our people. And that is very, very beautiful. Culturally informed trauma approaches, care, and practices can support healing and wellness through building on our collective strength and shared resilience of Indigenous people to restore balance. Oops, okay, I didn't know it could do that. I'm going to just move that around. Next. So, Trauma-informed care is the shift of engaging people from the explorative question of what is wrong with you to what has happened to you and how can I help? I think that's why I like New Amsterdam, because he says that. How can I help? Culturally informed trauma approaches considers not only the individual, but family and community and the collective experience of people. And so when we understand that culturally informed approaches are a way of thinking and doing that provides a holistic approach with that understanding and builds upon the resiliency and strength, then we are being culturally informed in our trauma approach. When we understand all of what has happened, all of the ways in which there can be challenges, that also helps us to be more culturally informed in our trauma approaches. Utilizing these approach can support hope, belonging, meaning, and purpose, and help restore balance and wellness. To be culturally trauma aware is to be aware of the context of individual people's experience of colonialism that has not only disrupted and disconnected Indigenous peoples from their original ways of life, but contributed to collective historical trauma in all of the changes that we experienced in every system of our original structure and way of life to support our way of being and living. Through the colonial laws, policies resulting in civilization and assimilation that resulted in residential schools and contributed greatly to the intergenerational trauma and resulting ongoing challenges that we see in our communities, because some of these laws and policies and structures still exist and it's embedded within the system. And so our people often will experience systemic racism and discrimination. And our capacity and ability to be open, to educate, to create awareness, develop competency, to advocate, navigate, liaison is so important for the wellness of our people. In this slide, I want to talk a little bit about what those principles mean in the context of the Indigenous Wellness framework. Spiritual wellness creates hope, fostering trauma awareness, nurtures hope in trauma-informed care and practice. By enhancing awareness, we facilitate hope. It is possible to support healing and wellness. Emotional wellness creates belonging, placing connection within belonging supports grounding and tethering in relation between self and others in creation. In trauma-informed approaches, this is about safety and relationship to build trust and compassion and connection to support their belonging. Mental wellness creates meaning. In trauma-informed care and practice, it's about facilitating choice, collaboration, ensures knowledge and understanding about self, others, and life in meaningful ways. They need to live their life. They need to be supported to live their life. And so we walk beside people because they need to live their life. Physical wellness creates purpose. In trauma-informed care and practice, utilizing a strength-based approach builds upon the innate strength, resiliency gives and enhances skill building to support a new way of being, doing, and living that provides purpose. So here are some of the protective factors of the First Nations or Indigenous peoples. And we can build these. We can strengthen work with community that builds upon our shared strengths and resiliency. We can provide awareness of support and knowledge, experience and capacity, pride with our identity, cultural connections, healthy relationships, families and communities, and our relational connection with creation and creator. As service providers in First Nations, we experience and or have witnessed trauma. Our programs and services sometimes creates conditions and dynamics that trigger trauma. And certainly our interrelation with the system can do the same. So it's really important that we have strong, supportive, caring circles. We also think about all of the things that we came from and that we have experienced and that still exist. And we also think about how we are as a people. We are related, we are connected. And when we're helpers in our communities and organizations, we are working with our relatives. And so it is really important for our work environment to be healthy, to be supportive. It's really important that we have our own circle of care that supports our wellness and that we take care of our wellness. Oh, there we go. So to prevent the systems of vicarious trauma and burnout from escalating, we can utilize our team and managers to support regular debriefing. And often we can provide other supports within our organization and systems. Employee assistance, wellness programs. We can engage in a reflective practice as a way of doing work. This means that we are not doing work alone. We are doing work as a group, as a team, as an organization, as a community. And when we build that circle relation, then we are sharing the caring and sharing the strength. That's what helps us to be able to do the work that we've been asked to do. We can also do one-on-one peer with our manager, with counselors, with other support people, within our team approach, our organizational process. And there's many ways in which we can also process individually. We need to honor all of those boundaries in order to be able to make sure that we maintain our connection and we create that space in order to make sure that we will take care of our wellness. We need to be kind and supportive to ourselves and to others in the way that we work and to celebrate who we are and what we're doing and in our personal lives as well. Thunderbird has a wellness worker guidebook. I'm not going to go over this in detail, but it's talking about supportive supervisory relationships in trauma-informed approach and how that can help. And when we work from a place of without judgment, reflection, non-critical feedback, give choice and collaboration, we actually build capacity. We build strength and resilience for people to maintain wellness, for organizations to maintain wellness, and it empowers us by focusing on our strengths to strengthen our capacity, growth, and skill to development to be able to do our work. We are all born with resilience. It can be nurtured and strengthened. And from an Indigenous perspective, resilience factors include being spirit-centered beliefs, values, gifts, and relational connection to family, community, creation, creator. It's the positive energy and capacity, ability to cope, adjust, adapt, recover from stress and adversity, and the challenges in life that includes personality traits, thriving in the face of adversity. We know that there are many things that can help us, and there are many new information, neuroscience, neuroplasticity, emotional intelligence, that demonstrate that we have huge capacities to be able to live life well and grow. And so it's really important for us to be able to maintain hope, to encourage that sense of belonging and connection, to be able to facilitate our knowing and understanding for meaning in our work and who we are in our lives, and to focus on strengths. That's where you build from. You cannot build from deficit. You need to build from strength. Caring and supportive community, nurturing that sense of belonging, that greater circle, and understanding and knowledge and skill development to support that contributions, that sense of belonging and meaning and purpose within our family and community and people. It connects us in our identity, culture, and community beliefs, our shared knowing of who we are and how we're related, to nurture collective resilience and strength. All of us are responsible for maintaining good and harmonious relations within extended family and community. Our language guides us in our relationships. In a healing circle, it helps us to develop new ways of thinking, believing, feeling, and our relation and connection. Our answers are within us. Land for Healing is one way in which we can support healing and wellness naturally. And we know that the land has always been fundamental for our health and cultural identity as Indigenous peoples. We have the commonly held belief that the interconnectedness of all life, which includes human person, coexist in balance, harmony, respect, and care. All beings of earth and the earth are from the earth, and Indigenous peoples have developed specific concepts and practices and standards of care that are derived and deployed on the land, which commonly aim to maintain spiritual, emotional, mental, and physical wellness. We have great strength when we have connection to land and we utilize the land to support our wellness and balance. And so land, language, and creation and ancestry are how wellness is maintained and renewed within a caring family and environment. The land is thus viewed as a living, breathing, conscious being that heals and teaches, that therefore the source of our own positive cultural identity and balanced well-being. Land is a teacher and a healer. It reminds us of our relationality. It is the key element of culture. It is also a source of culturally specific life skills. And when we do this individually, as families, as groups, as community, it supports our overall purpose and our wellness. Think about all of the activities and practices connected to land that you deployed, that you are involved in, that you are engaged in, and how that supports healing and wellness. This picture just shows a little bit about some of the activities of our culture: creating, harvesting berries, a sweat lodge ceremony, drumming, singing, dancing. All of these are ways and practices that we engage in as Indigenous people. And these support healing and wellness. And if you know anything about neuroscience and neuroplasticity, emotional intelligence, epigenetics, you will know that it is possible to heal and be well. Practices like meditation, mindfulness, breathing, tapping. I'm going to just stop at tapping for a minute to help regulate our response to trauma and what's happening within our being. Think about the drum and that tapping. There's something happening there, but there's also language. There's also singing. You're strengthening already a practice that is doing so much for our wellness within our being. And so there are other practices that are helpful and people might find useful. And, anything that's physical, that supports rest, relaxation, that connects us to land and others, that enables us to support also planting healthy foods, medicines, social learning, counseling with elders and learning from elders or other cultural knowledge keepers and holders. And two, trauma-specific therapeutic approaches. It is really an individual choice about what's going to work for people. We work with people from where they are at, and they determine the way forward. And we provide options, opportunities, and support how they wish to live life and move forward. Collective historical and intergenerational trauma through colonization has led to social determinant and health outcome challenges experienced by First Nations communities. The path forward includes healing, connection, and relation through culture to restore balance. Trauma travels through family lines until someone is ready to heal it. Your ancestors and your descendants celebrate every time you do the work. And here are my big long references. So if you want to take a snapshot, you can take a snapshot of this and this. And we have many resources on our website. We also have a wellness app, and you can download that from the Play Store or App Store that supports overall wellness. We're really proud of that. We also have a podcast called Minobamadswin, and we have many, many other resources. So on the Thunderbird pf.org website, that's where you'll find the library for all our resources. We have a training and education training catalog and a national calendar for our training. We do many trainings. We have a community wellness hub. And if you contact training at thunderbirdpf.org, you can join our training. There's lots of resources. There's networking and connection and sharing there to support wellness. I want to say thank you very much for listening to me. I know it was a lot of information, and I apologize for taking so much time in sharing this information.
Okay, Deanna, thank you so much for this amazing presentation. We have used all of our time, and I realize that that means that some of our guests will need to move on, and we're sorry to see you go, but we understand. We also, I would like to propose that we do take an additional 15 minutes for all those who can stay, so that I can present some of your wonderful questions to Deanna. for her to respond to. And then we'll move right into inviting Mary Lou and Dan Smoke back to bring our virtual gathering to a close. So Deanna, many questions, and I'm going to start you off with this one. Well, actually, first I'm just going to make a statement. In addition to what Deanna just shared with you, when we send the link for the recording of the webinar to everybody who registered, we'll also send a link to the Thunderbird Partnership Foundation's website.
That's excellent.
Okay, because it's always hard to get those when you're in situations like this. So we'll definitely do that. Deanna, the first question was, I'm hearing Indigenous and First Nations being used interchangeably when looking at the various wellness frameworks. I'm wondering, which elements have been developed with Inuit communities?
I cannot speak specifically to that. And so what I do invite is, if that is something that is of interest to you, I want you to email training at thunderbirdpf.org with your question, and we can prepare a response. I haven't been at Thunderbird more than 2 years. And so I cannot give you that context. And I want to ensure that you get the correct information.
No, thank you, Deanna. I'm sure everybody respects that, and just that very professional practice of knowing the limits of your knowledge in response to a given question. We truly appreciate that. I'm going to move on to another question. I have a question regarding working with Indigenous peoples from a trauma-informed perspective. I work in the justice system, which is inherently a Eurocentric institution. My understanding of ethical space would be in recognizing and acknowledging Indigenous worldview and trying to work with Indigenous people in a way that fulfills the mandate of the institution that I work in, while supporting Indigenous people through recognizing trauma-informed approaches, including culture and community supports. Any further wisdom would be appreciated. Deanna?
Well, if you work in the justice system, you are aware of the histories of people who find themselves in these places. There was a man that I had great respect for, and his name was Art Solomon. He was an elder who advocated, and he ensured that people who are Indigenous can also, in their time, support real healing and connection to who they are, to have wellness for when they can continue their lives. And so he ensured ceremonies, he ensured knowledge, practice would be able to go into a system in order to be a part of programming and services that people would receive. That understanding in my work previously, in working with the Ontario government on ending violence against Indigenous women, also meant that all of the departments, ministries of the government were working together, and there were very beautiful initiatives coming forward to build cultural competency, to build a healing approach that recognizes Indigenous knowledge and practice in supporting those endeavors. We have a long way to go, not just in the system in regards to protection protection, but also the systems in where we're looking at courts and we're looking at those who apply laws. And there's lots of work that needs to be done there. The more people that get educated and become aware of how all of these things are connected and the systemic response, then maybe we will begin to see change. I hope that answers your question a little bit.
Thanks, Deanna. Another participant says, at a past presentation I attended, the speaker discussed how in many tribes, there is a much stronger focus on the need to listen than is seen in European culture. And as a result, a client may appear as unengaged if the clinician does not understand differences in culture. However, there is a strong European bias in research. And to my knowledge, most, if not all, trauma treatments focus on the client doing the vast majority of the talking. Do you have any advice for trying to balance this and being culturally aware while recognizing that empirical research still has a large degree of cultural bias?
There are many tools, many practices that can be part of a bundle of helping and healing. And so we don't have to stick to one modality, one way of doing things. And so when people are using land for healing approaches and going out on the land, there is a difference in the way people are engaged and participating in order to support that. And so what I challenge you to do is to learn more about Indigenous peoples and culture, and think about the treatment modalities that you have that possibly may be congruent with those in order to give choices and options and opportunities for engagement in participating in these processes. Hope that's helpful.
Thank you, Deanna. And the final question that for our time today is, how do non-Indigenous practitioners respectfully create space to speak about impact on spirit and soul wound in a way that is not inappropriate or Eurocentric?
I'm going to have to ask you to repeat that for me.
So the question was, how do non-Indigenous practitioners respectfully create space to speak about the impact of trauma on the spirit and soul wounds in a way that is non-Eurocentric when they're working with Indigenous clients?
I think that if you consider where people are at, right? And you give choice and opportunity and you collaborate, you build on their strength, that if that is something that they wish to have a conversation or process, then they may need to connect with cultural knowledge keepers, Indigenous healers and practitioners in order to support that work. And so then your real role as a helper is supportive, and there may be some reflective, with maybe some opportunities, some different modalities. I know I hear people play with sand now. No. In a box. But there are so many different ways to create opportunities: art, creation, writing, even doing storyboards and, video or song. There's so many ways in which we can make meaning for ourselves and our lives. And so I encourage you to think outside the box and open it more broadly to be able to support what they want to do, what they feel is necessary and meaningful for them.
Truly centering that individual, that other, the client. Thank you, Deanna. I hope another time we have more time and can have a further discussion. But right now, I just, on behalf of everybody, want to thank you for your time that you took in preparing the presentation today and for sharing your wisdom and knowledge with us. We truly appreciate it. I'd also like to express our appreciation to the Toronto Sign Language Interpreter Service for their support during today's presentation. It is always so appreciated. And before I turn it over to Mary Lou and Dan Smoke, I want to invite everybody to join us on February 8th and 9th for the Learning Network Virtual Forum, Reinventing Our Campuses, Creating Real Community Safety to Address Sexual Violence. And now I'm going to invite Mary Lou and Dan to bring us to a close. Mary Lou, Dan?
Hey, bonjour. Oh, didn't open up yet. Okay, here we are. The buttons were sticky. Well, I just want to say that was a fantastic presentation. I have known Jim since I was 13 years old, and I lived in Toronto at that time. And so when I was 17 years old, I traveled out west with him and his partner at the time and a group of university students. And we traveled out to the ecumenical conference, and that changed my life forever because I got to know about the real traditional teachings. So I would like to have a copy of anything you presented today, okay, if that's possible. So anyway, it just makes me feel so good to learn more about what my old friend has to say. And, he's like the authority in, Anishinaabe culture and teachings. And in the Midewans, yeah. And I'm not Midewan. I've been to Midewan ceremonies. Just it's kind of hard for me to make a commitment because I can't go all the time. And my husband's Iroquois. I can't make him become one, I'm a Midewan. So anyway, so I have to learn whatever I can from other sources. So I'm really, really pleased to be able to turn in today and listen to everything that you shared. Also, Art Solomon was a close personal friend of ours too. And he always talked about the just us system, how that system was made for the white man and not for the Native people. And so, I feel like I'm really close to you because these people too, And so I'm kind of flabbergasted, I'm just so happy. And so I'm gonna let Dan say a couple words if he needs to.
Yes, Chimigwech, Mary Lou. Yes, I like Mary Lou's exuberance because, I identified with right away when you talked about Jim Dumont. I was thinking about Jim because when you started to talk, I guess Linda was mentioning how many people were tuning in to us on this webinar, and we were at a creation story that Jim Dumont did just recently, right here in town, and London, and there was about 1,200 people that came for that, and I was thinking, geez, you're right up there with the teacher, with
Yeah.
Jim, getting attracting as many people as you did today. That was great. I really enjoyed it too. I enjoyed like how the I don't know anyone who has been affected by trauma. Most everyone I know has suffered. And I was so happy when I was growing up. There was no word for trauma. There was no word for it, and that was back. Like I was growing up in the 50s, 60s, and there was no word. And then all of a sudden, someone discovered trauma, and they put the word out there, and I'm thinking, oh, now I belong. And there's so many of us who have suffered that, have gone through that. So it's very fitting that you're able to present this Indigenous perspective in such a good way, such a good manner, so that we can all learn, and we can all learn and benefit from that. So I just, again, like I said before, this is going to be good Hanokwa. In my language, Hanokwa means medicine. So this is good medicine for my mind, body, and spirit. And I'm really glad that I tuned in today. And I'm glad that the center asked us to help out, because this was a great event.
Yes.
But I like what you were saying
Yeah.
earlier about Jim and Art. Yeah, Art was a great boy. I think he was probably he was the first elder that I actually traveled with and sundanced with, and enjoyed spending time with. And then I found out that he spent time with the Akwesasne White Roots of Peace, and that's like, I don't know, there's not too many of us who did that.
Yeah, and especially he was an Anishinaabe, and this
Yes.
was an Iroquois
Yeah.
group. Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, my heart is very full, and I'm very
Yeah.
happy. And
Good.
so we're going to close with a Native American prayer. This comes from the Lakota people, of which I have a little bit of that blood in me. And this comes from Chief Yellowhawk. O great Spirit, whose voice I hear in the winds, and whose breath gives life to all the world, hear me. I come before you, one of your children. I am small and weak. I need your strength and wisdom. Let me walk in beauty and make my eyes ever behold the red and purple sunset. Make my hands respect the things you have made, my ears sharp to hear your voice. Make me wise so that I may know the things you have taught my people, the lessons you have hidden in every leaf and rock. I seek strength not to be superior to my brothers and sisters, but to be able to fight my greatest enemy, myself. Make me ever ready to come to you with clean hands and straight eyes, so that when life fades as a fading sunset, my spirit may come to you without shame.
All
Umatakiwasa.
my relations. Daneto. Hi.
Aho.
Miigwech for that. Miigwech.
Now,
Aho.
It has been an amazing, I guess, 2 hours to spend with all of you. And now on behalf of everybody, thank you and goodbye.